Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. Today we're once again talking about Skeleton Crew, but first, as I was about to record this video, it came up on my timeline that today marks the 3rd anniversary of the Book of Boba Fett. A rather divisive show. It certainly has its issues and its critics, but it also has its fans, and you guys know, I have a very love-hate relationship with it. I see the charm in many of those episodes. I think it was still a shame Mando and Grogu reunited outside of their series. I don't think Tamara Morrison got the show he wanted, and I don't think they did justice all in all to the character of Boba Fett, the legacy, and what he stands for. But at the same time, it's a series with some canon, timeline-defining moments, ones we're still realizing the implications of. When did Ahsoka first meet Luke? And will this pay off in a future project? Maybe one of the movies? Those kinds of questions. But now that we have yet another Mandoverse show, it's kind of insane how Skeleton Crew is following through on so many of the promises of Boba Fett, but doing them so much better. The mystery is more complex and intriguing, the world building, exploration of planets, new settings, new characters, new species, a cohesive structure to the entire thing. A story about children lost in space is doing intrigue, grit, and whimsy better than a show focused on the galaxy's most famous bounty hunter. So it's a mixture of longing for what could have been, but simultaneously an appreciation for how good this current series is. Jon Watts, who would have thought, of all showrunners, would bring back so many of the fundamentally magic elements of the galaxy far, far away. It reminds me of the Tony Gilroy situation, a guy who doesn't care about Star Wars canon, doesn't know much about lore, but is able to create a fan-favourite, incredible TV show set in the Star Wars universe, with less connections to legacy characters than shows like Kenobi and Book of Boba. Just a couple of thoughts there. But look, this isn't a video about Book of Boba Fett. I wanted to mark the anniversary because I covered that show to death. But let's get on to Skeleton Crew. So a couple of weeks ago, do you guys remember this video? I spoke about why I'm worried about the character of KB. Her mum's back on Attin in the 3rd episode expressed she has urgent medical needs, but we never learnt what those were. Does she have some sort of condition? What's the situation? On Kim's moon, she expresses she felt cold. I didn't think too much of it, but I did take it as a sign, a sinister foreshadowing. And believe it or not, my dear friends, the most recent episode, episode 5, has done it again. In a throwaway line, in the scene where they're devising a plan, they've checked into the resort on Lanupa, and Jod is urging the kids to take the mission seriously. He warns them that Dear Lovely Pocket, as he sarcastically calls the bounty hunter, might call in their bounty at any moment, which we know she does. She contacts Brutus. He then instructs them they have to hurry, they have to split into 2 teams and search the spa. Then we see KB panicking, and she says, I can't go down there. And then Fern turns to her friend and wonders if it's to do with the corrosion of her cybernetic. KB defensively says no and gives the excuse, it's just gross. But it's so obvious that was not the reason she was afraid. She didn't want to say it. And I'm starting to realize not even Fern knows the full condition of her friend. Because this episode, episode 5, was so full of action, Easter eggs, a freaking lightsaber at the end, these smaller, seemingly less significant interactions are forgotten, and I realised there was more to the line about KB's medical requirements than we thought, and to my estimation, they're building up to a moment she's gonna need help. I think it's probably gonna be in the next episode. There was some talk in the initial interviews with the cast, that in a similar way that Neil was in the spotlight in episode 4, KB has her moment in episode 6. Hopefully a very character-focused episode. But those are just some of my thoughts on this line. Again, a dark bit of foreshadowing, and I do just want to share with you a couple of thoughts, a couple of predictions, and these are mainly based on the trailer. I think this massive crab-like thing is in the next episode, in the wilderness of Lanupa. The children have temporarily escaped Jod, and I think they're going to find themselves navigating on their own, and it seems like from a couple of these frames, they're going to be separated, Neil and Fern, and the other team, KB and Wim. Because it's a Goonies-like show, coming of age, are they gonna have a dispute? And also at some point, something bad happens to the Onyx Cinder. It's either Brutus's pirates or the Lanupa authorities. So now, my dear friends, I want to go a bit deeper on a couple of reveals from this episode. The first one concerns SM-33's former captain, Captain Rennod. a keen-eyed viewer was able to capture the perfect moment where we can confirm he is in fact a Weequay, one who I think died a long time ago. There are theories he is the supervisor of Attin, and while it's very possible he was once upon a time, I think he's long dead, which goes back to my theory that there is no longer a living supervisor, but the droids have taken over. I think Rennod was the last supervisor, and then the droids, in light of his eventual death, just kept operations going. I feel like that's a probable twist. What do you guys think? And so finally, on the most recent episode, I've spoken and theorized about the lightsaber, but there's another moment near the end that has sparked a bit of a fan debate, and it concerns Jod's turn, reverting to putting the fortune the Old Republic mint before the children and getting them home. He was working for fun, but he invokes his rights in the Pirate's Code to challenge the captain. But because Fern is a child, he urges her, just yield. He puts a dagger up to her. Wim tries to be heroic with a lightsaber. He fails. Fern gives in, and just before SM-33 is going to restrain them, Wim has the bright idea to initiate the trapdoor so they fall through and temporarily can get away. But it's Jod's actions that have caused a bit of confusion as to his intentions. On the one hand, you have fans saying he went too far. He didn't have to do that. I don't for 1 second believe he intended to harm Fern, but did he really have to put a dagger up to her? Did it have to get that dramatic? And what's going to happen next? Now initially I thought, well maybe the New Republic is going to arrest him. However, some footage from the original trailer seems to imply they're still going to work together, but now with Jod as the captain, because what might have been going on in this scene, albeit very aggressively, is Jod just trying to be the adult and take control of the situation, especially now knowing what's at stake, knowing what the treasure on Attin is, but it's still a betrayal nonetheless. I think the argument in this instance is that it was a strategic move from Jod to take captain status, because he felt as though he had to save them collectively. In previous episodes, it was the agreement of Fern and SM-33 that Jod was basically working for them, but now the stakes are dire, and this was his act to take control. But I don't think he's gone fully dark. And like I said, in one of the trailers, we see him with his lightsaber on his belt and he's leading the kids out to their next destination. So the dramatics I think are just a way of tying up this episode, but it gets better. And I think by the end, he will have a full redemption. What do you guys think of this? What do you make of my theories? Some of my additional thoughts of episode 5? I've now made a handful of videos breaking down certain Easter eggs, certain theories. Go back and check those out if you've not done so. If you enjoyed this one, guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.